PlayStation, my beloved. The company that has made me who I am today. A sociopath that belongs in a padded cell. I love PlayStation so much, guys, you don't even understand. Not only have they made some of my favorite consoles of all time, they've also released some of the greatest games I have ever played in my life. The PSP was my first ever gaming console, then for a few years I switched to the Xbox 360, which is also goated, but the PS3 called to me, so I made the switch back to the good side. Then I had the PS4, which was conveniently a jet engine and gaming console in one box.
This is your pilot speaking.
No way, bro. I go through this every day.
I mean, Sony are just geniuses when it comes to design, and now we're here at the PS5. I don't want to hear a f***ing thing about the PS5 not having any games. Go take a look at the Xbox catalog and come back to me. Oh, you're a Switch user? That's laughable. You can't even call yourself a gamer with your outdated ass console. Sorry, I got carried away there. That's just my passion and Percocets talking. So I think I've made it clear that I like PlayStation and their first party games, but I want to take this time to decide on the objectively best and worst first party games that PlayStation has ever released. Actually, no, I've chosen mostly recent titles and only the ones I've played or know enough about, mainly PS5 games, but there may be a few cross-gens in the mix. We're starting off strong with Astro's Playroom. This may come as a surprise to some of you, but one of the best games on the PS5 actually comes pre-installed on your console. And whilst I'm personally not a huge fan of platformers, this game hooked me in through its exceptional showcase of the PS5's capabilities and DualSense features. It's so amazing that I wish it was longer, which I would have never expected from a tech showcase. A tier. Next up, we have the first and only Strand-type game, Death Stranding. This game manifested from the mentally unstable mind of Hideo Kojima, and it shows. You deliver packages in an apocalyptic America whilst evading a bunch of monsters. Oh, you also have a baby strapped to your chest, and you can pee on command. Despite the silliness of Death Stranding, I absolutely loved this game. There's a certain beauty in it that I've not seen in any other game. It's not a game meant for everyone, but it gets an S tier from the only reliable source on the internet, me. Forspoken. It looked kinda cool until it released and we realized that it's a whole bunch of cringy dialogue and lackluster gameplay. C tier. Ghost of Tsushima, one of the most visually stunning and beautiful experiences ever. This game is vibrant and it lets you live out fantasies of being a badass samurai who goes against his code in order to save his island. The gameplay is fun and only gets repetitive towards the last few hours of the story, which isn't really a bad thing. The artistic direction is chef's kiss and the story is great, exploring fictional samurai history and a moral code. A tier. I did want to touch upon God of War 4 as well. I will confess, I have not played any God of War game apart from the 2018 release, but that did not hinder my enjoyment of this game whatsoever. The story, the music, and the characters, oh god, the characters, all came together to form a cinematic grand journey across a fantasy realm. This bad boy won Game of the Year in 2018, and for good reason, but it beat my favorite game of all time, Red Dead Redemption 2, so I have some animosity towards God of War for that. Jokes aside, the game does have its flaws, mainly the gameplay itself. Combat gets repetitive, there's not a whole lot of enemy or boss variety, and the puzzles are not really there to puzzle the player. They just kind of get in the way for a few minutes, then really not that difficult to solve. But God of War 2018 will go in B tier. Horizon Zero Dawn. I played this game only this year after many years of being told that it's a really good game with a solid story. Welp, I gotta break it to you, this game is not all that. I didn't find the visuals appealing, the story was boring, the characters were one-dimensional, and while the map is often praised, I had no interest in exploring any of it, and instead opted to zoom from mission to mission. But I'm a villain, not a monster, and I do have some praise for it. The combat itself is exceptional. Fighting big boy robot dinos is so satisfying, it feels like you're the underdog in each fight just because of how small you are and how you're not made out of steel or a dinosaur, and that makes each victory that much more satisfying. Seeing dinosaur pods breaking off depending on where you attack them is also super nice. So whilst I didn't enjoy the majority of Zero Dawn, the combat carried hard. C tier though, sorry nerds. Conveniently, the next game on the list is Horizon Forbidden West. I liked it. Weirdly, this game was a lot more appealing to me than its predecessor, although I think the popular opinion is that Zero Dawn is superior. The visuals of Forbidden West are f***ing incredible. Top 3 best looking games I've ever seen for sure. The story was a lot more intense and appealing. It also has a really strong start. I like how Aloy has to prepare for her long journey before the game sets you off into the Forbidden West. The combat is just as good, if not better. The story is still somewhat memorable, and a lot of the characters lose their one-dimensionality. Basically, this game is an improvement over the first in every aspect. B tier. Sackboy: A Big Adventure. One thing to know about me is that I love Little Big Planet, both 1 and 2. Some of my most fun gaming memories come from those 2 games, playing all those user-created levels with others, listening to that banging soundtrack, and also Da Vinci? But I digress. Sackboy: A Big Adventure is not a Little Big Planet game. It doesn't have user-created levels, it is a linear platformer that takes you across several worlds, and some of these levels go incredibly hard. There's this musical level that's synced up to Bruno Mars' Uptown Funk, with every major player action and the entire world reacting to the music. It's hard to explain, but that shit was magical. But apart from a few highlights, this game didn't live up to my infinite hype for it, and it wasn't very memorable. I haven't really felt the urge to go back to it. I'll be putting it into C tier, which makes me really sad, but I have to be brutally honest here. Next up is Marvel's Spider-Man. I'm going to hit you all with a take which I'm probably going to get flamed for. Compared to the other Insomniac Spider-Man games, I think this one is the weakest in terms of combat, gameplay, and side missions. It's still a good game, don't get me wrong, but it was just too repetitive and sometimes incredibly slow and boring, primarily the MJ missions. In terms of story and characters, it was better than Miles Morales, but I think that's the only thing it had going for it. B tier. And next up we have Miles Morales. This was a game to showcase the power of the PlayStation 5 as well as introduce the character of Miles into the world of Spider-Manning. I'm not sure if it's classed as a spin-off, but it's something of that nature, with the story taking under 10 hours to complete generally. It's short and sweet, not overstaying its welcome, and condensing as much information as possible about Miles' character in a short game. The villains were much weaker in this game than the last, so it's quite fortunate that the game wasn't 30 hours long. The combat is more fun this time around, being more fast-paced, and it being optimized for next-gen consoles gave us a sample of what is to come for the Spider-Man series. A tier. Spider-Man 2. Oh man, this game actually got my vote for Narrative of the Year, and by a long shot. In case it's not been clear yet, I'm not like a mega fan of the Spider-Man games. I think they're fun, but not something I anticipate, just something to play once and leave it alone. But this game right here, blew any other narrative out of the water this year for me. While I still think it doesn't solve the issue that the previous games have had concerning repetitiveness, if you just stick to the main story, you're in for a treat. Featuring arguably the best villain in the Insomniac Spider-Man series, this game had me hooked from start to finish. The gameplay is also a lot more fast-paced now, adding several new methods of traversal across the map, as well as some great new abilities in combat. Overall, an amazing game and the best so far, S tier. If you didn't like my thoughts on Spider-Man 2018, you're gonna like my thoughts on Stray even less. I was excited for this game before it released. Cyberpunk-esque worlds are awesome, and the concept of controlling a cat in an apocalyptic future, even awesomer, and definitely different from anything I'd ever seen before. But alas, it failed to satisfy me. Gameplay-wise, it's incredibly easy. It feels like the game is holding your hand a bit too much, even in dangerous situations. Another issue I had with Stray, and this might just be me, but some of the open areas were cool looking, but very confusing and repetitive to traverse. The game had me going back and forth between streets and rooftops constantly, and it didn't make it clear where my destinations were sometimes, so I'd spend a whole lot of time just trying to find the next area so I could progress through the game. Maybe this was intentional, or maybe it's just bad level design, I don't know, but either way, I didn't enjoy it. I can praise the concept and the music, which are both amazing. I just wish the execution was better. Again, this might just be me because I've not seen many complaints about Stray online. Unfortunately though, it's going in C tier. And my final game is The Last of Us Part 1. I could have included Part 2, but I didn't want too many cross-gen games creeping in, so I kept it to a minimum. I completed Part 1, the remake, and loved every second of it. The visuals are just stunning, from the character faces to the destroyed landscapes. This is one of the most photorealistic games I've ever played, and I managed to make good use of the included photo mode. I had already played The Last of Us before the remake, so the story was nothing new to me, but the cutscenes just hit so much harder, even more than before, with the ultra-realistic expressions and emotions that could be captured on screen with these next-generation graphics. Gameplay-wise, I think Part 2 does better, and another hot take, I think Part 2's story is better by a mile, but Part 1 still gets an S tier, one of the most iconic games of all time. Phew, we've made it through the tier list. This is all subject to change, by the way. I find that some games I didn't enjoy once, I enjoy much more years later, and games that I once loved might get replaced with other games which I happen to love more. I want to hear your thoughts on this tier list, and I also cannot wait for all the comments that call me crazy for liking The Last of Us 2 and not liking Stray and Spider-Man as much as you do. But hey, it's called an opinion, and I think I deserve to have that, you Now, here's a fun fact about raccoons. Our masks are anti-glare devices. Unlike you humans, we can actually stare directly into the sun without facing any repercussions. See you.